Welcome to week 7 of the Lowell Car Fantasy Football League podcast. No time like the present to jump right back into things. And as we await our guests to join us, hopefully they haven't been affected too much by the government shutdown. um, We will dive right into it. But as we sit here, roughly halfway through the season, we're almost to that 50% mark, and we've got 3 teams over 500, 4 teams below 500, and 5 teams sitting at 500. It's quite a jumbled mess. We're going to discuss that quite a bit tonight. We really clearly see some separation forming in some of these um, divisions, and don't see it forming in others. We'll talk about who's maybe the worst team, who may emerge from this jumbled up pack of teams. We are coming to you a little bit early this week just because we've got some scheduling conflicts. We've got adult men's league basketball on Wednesday nights, and then we're out of town for work conference Thursday and Friday. So had to come to you a little bit early this week, you know, and we'll really get into it in more detail. We've got a good little show here set up for you all. And of course, if you're finding us for the first time and you have no idea what you stumbled into, this is a podcast dedicated to a fantasy football league that's been running now 13 years by a bunch of college friends. I'm the commissioner. That's all I'll put to it. If you stumble across this and you have no idea what we're talking about, that's okay. I do want to welcome in our guest, though, and we will get right to it. He needs really no introduction. He doesn't want to be doxxed. He doesn't want us to reveal his location, his name, or his identity. So what we will do is throw him up here in a minute. But before we introduce the shortest yard, we'll just jump right into it. Sir, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Busy. It's been a hectic day, but uh, such is life. Such is life.
Yeah.
Um, as a government employee, has the shutdown affected you in any way other than potential transit issues? We'll leave it that.
Well, I mean, besides not getting paid, that not much. It's I still go to work. I still do the exact same job, just none of the paychecks.
It's a bizarre time, right? Um, as you know, we know many other government employees in that boat. We know others on the furloughed side of the coin.
Yeah.
Wow, I suspect, unfortunately, we might have a few more weeks of this ping pong battle. So, anyway, we don't have to spend too much time on that. How do you feel about your team? We'll start there. You're 3-3, along with a number of other teams. You're still in the thick of it. You're in fact right now. If the playoffs were today, you'd be in. How do you feel?
Barely. It's obviously this week was a tough week for injuries. Um, all my top wide receivers went out. Nakua, Johnson, and uh, all in the same week. So I kind of had a pretty bad run of luck this week. We'll see. I think it's going to depend upon, how fast, Amari and Hampton bounces back. It's going to depend upon, it's going to come down to luck a little bit. There's obviously some trades to be made, um, depending upon, what opportunities, present themselves. But, right now I'm kind of in a we'll see mode. I have a number of players who are day to day or out, or so I have to kind of figure out how to navigate these injuries.
Well, I mean, the good thing is you have Kamani Vidal, so that
Yeah,
you didn't start him last week. It wouldn't have mattered.
no, it wouldn't have.
Your optimum score still would have lost the matchup, but that's a nice little ticket to play there. Obviously, Marvin Harrison Jr. getting injured early. Same for Puka. Quentin Johnson didn't even play. Unless you had a crystal ball, you were pretty much done from the start there. When you think about playing, 6-on-9, um,
Yeah,
football, that's not going to help a lot. But overall, I mean, it is a good team. Baker, Barkley, Kyron Williams, and Puka shouldn't be out too long, if anything. And um, on the bench you've got Kamani Vidal, you've got Xavier Worthy, Devonta Smith in theory is a solid player. So Hampton on IR. I mean, you've got some pieces there, and of course you're welcome to make trades. That's if you really feel desperate. But there have been so many receiver injuries. I just don't know what that market looks like.
Yeah.
But it
No, that's it.
is
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
The other thing is you basically lost because your opponent had Rico Dowdle as a keeper, and finally that paid off, and Rico Dowdle went for 30 points. The rest of their team didn't do very much.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't want to beat yourself up too bad. It was one of those, I think, kind of fluky matchups more than anything. So
Yeah.
So at least
So
that's my take.
no, I appreciate it. And the injuries have just been tough this year across the league. And so I figure that I'm finally getting my share of that run of luck that some other teams have faced. And I, got to figure out how to deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's been an injury plagued season. It feels like, right?
Yeah.
I think that's one of the I don't know. That's one of the things I think has affected a lot of teams, and so no, I don't know that it's affected everybody, but it certainly had some pretty big impacts. And I mean, for example, if you drafted Burrow, right, your season was massively changed after 1 week.
Yeah.
If you had Chase, you had Higgins, Chase Brown. I mean, there's a lot of guys just on that one team, but you see across the league injuries affecting guys. Um, we'll see. I mean, you're in a situation where your division's very competitive, but around the league, there's a lot of bad teams, right? Just when you think about points for and things like that, does that give you hope?
A little bit. A little bit. It's, but you got to win enough games to make it. That's what it comes down to. You know, you just worry about those kind of fluky games where your players go out and lingering injuries kind of affect your team. So it does give me some hope.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, we had, I won't say not the worst team in the league, but the last winless team picked up a win last week. So anything is possible. You know, just like maybe all the person putting away the dishes will do so in a quieter fashion. Um, but we'll take what we can get here. We're not too picky. So it's just one of those things, right? I think that it's fantasy football. We're almost at the halfway mark. I don't know if you've taken a lot of time to look at the standings. I was taking a peek. I mean, it is interesting when you just think about all these teams that are 500 or basically thereabouts. Jacobs, he's got a he's going to win his division, I think, barring catastrophe here. He's going to win that pretty easy. Probably has a good shot at the 1 seed again. Uh, in my division, I don't know. Paul finally climbed to the top of that division. He's outscoring everybody in the division significantly, but he's got a bunch of losses. So, and it's Paul. In your division, I mean, I know Eric is 5-1, but Joe's right on his heels. You and Bodson are pretty close. I mean, that seems like a fairly competitive division, particularly when you start looking at points scored averages. Do you sort of get a sense of who you think will or will not kind of advance out of some of this jumbled up mess as it were? Uh-oh.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Well, I can now that you've unmuted yourself.
Yeah. I was
The
trying
the
to.
mute button got you. No, don't worry about it. It's okay. Well, I would say we take it out in post production, but we both know that's not going to happen. So
No, it's all good. I think honestly, I didn't think Matt's team was going to be the strongest, but he's definitely kind of really fortified it in a lot of ways, and I think he's going to be one of the teams to. Um, well, I think he's going to be a good team, a good strong contender. James Cook is on bye this week, obviously, but I think you get him back. Keenan Allen's going to be strong down the stretch, and Buka, if he's not out for too long, I haven't seen the update on his injuries, but if he's not out for too long, that can he could be great. I mean, it just is another story of injuries, but I mean, it is a solid core of a team. And just question is he going to get Ibuka back in time enough to
Yeah, I think with this team, the difficulty is, I mean, it's a very good team, but with just because of the nature of injuries, it's a situation where Ibuka's going to miss a couple of weeks. They're saying he's definitely going to be out for a couple of a couple of weeks here. We don't know exactly how long. I don't know if he'll go on IR, but and that definitely hurts. Sort of limits the ceiling. And of course, but we're in that part of the year where buys come into play. I mean, a lot of these players that Matt's looking at playing this week, people like Pittman, Dobbs, Wandale Robinson, those are sort of like lottery tickets, right? They're very boomer bust. They might hit. If they hit, it's going to be big. And if they don't, that's really what it comes down to. But he's got a lot of other solid talent, high floor guys this year. Trey McBride is a beast. He's got Javonte Williams is having a great year. Obviously, James Cook when he's not on bye. Keenan Allen, especially if Quentin Johnson's going to miss some time, is dependable. Although, really was not good against the Dolphins, and you do wonder for how long the Chargers can sustain three talented receivers producing anyway. But you're right. This team, at some point, as long as Ibuka is healthy when the playoffs come around, this is probably one of the better teams. I don't know that I would say it's the most loaded team, but it's definitely up there for sure. I think we'll just have to time will tell on that one.
yeah.
But I do think it's a strong team. But it's in this division with everybody's 500 basically. It's no numbnuts. I think that's the team. Everybody's just look. If you have 3 first-round picks, you should be pretty good. But for Paul, he's got he traded for JSN. He drafted McCaffrey, Bijan. I personally, I don't love the idea of relying on DK Metcalf, and his bench receivers really haven't been great. But I hate to say it, it probably is the best team, and maybe he can kind of do that wire to wire where he finally fulfills all the expectations.
No, I agree. I think his is obviously the strongest. But thing with fantasy, there's always a level of chance. You saw that the first part of the season where
Mm-hmm.
he's putting up these points, but one of the worst teams in the league. And so, I mean, maybe it is Paul's time, and I think it would be great for Paul to finally kind of have a breakthrough with all those draft picks. But I think talent. There are a lot of good teams at the top of the league for as many as there are bad teams at the bottom, and so I don't think even with those draft picks, it's necessarily a guarantee.
Oh, there's no guarantees for sure. There's definitely no guarantees. It's fantasy football. Anything can happen. You can be the best team and you can lose when you get down to the nitty gritty at the end of the year. So, we'll see. I guess the question I would have is when you look at this and you consider your team, you consider, I don't think my team is going to be there anywhere close to the end, but you consider a bunch of these 3-3 type teams. Are there ones that you lean towards and say, look, that's a team that I think is going to emerge from this group, or is it just too? You think there's just too much parity and too many injuries to really be able to say one or two teams are kind of a cut above the rest of this mediocre bunch?
So I tend to think that a lot of teams, all the teams sort of that are a bunch in the middle have a shot. They're one trade or two trades away, or one trade and an
Mhm.
injury to someone else in their division away from being the top team. And on the one hand, that's kind of hopeful, but on the other hand, it's feeling like you're one injury away from oblivion is kind of scary for all of us. And so it just makes it harder to know whether or not to go for broke and trade your draft picks next year for that big trade, or whether to kind of hold and see what you got and see how your team develops.
Yeah, we'll see. There's been a lot of trades already. When obviously you can look at it from your roster perspective, but do you anticipate there still being some big moves out there as we get closer to the trade deadline, given what's already transpired?
I mean, yeah, I do actually. I think I'm one of the, I guess, biggest potential players
Hmm.
in a big deal. And I think what I'm going to have to decide is looking at my team. how much it's worth it, how much I want to hedge for next season versus how much I want to go for broke. And it's really going to be about um, upside in a trade, upside this season versus next season. And I think if we're going to go for broke, you can do that, but it's the upside needs to be there in terms of players.
Oh, definitely. That's the hardest part, right? Of figuring it out. Do you have it? Are you competitive enough? Should you go and make that kind of move? Um, I don't know. That's such a tough one, right? That's really one of those tough decisions that we all struggle with. I mean, I think, like I said, I think we saw for me, it was I just don't feel like I had enough high end potential. I was so bad at running back, it wasn't going to be worth making that kind of move. But I completely understand and respect it. For people who look at it differently and make different decisions. I think it's going to be interesting. For you, you've got talent, right? If you decide to be a seller, you've got assets you can move. You could also be a buyer because you have a lot of good talent. So you might feel one or two pieces away. Um, we'll certainly see. I'm excited. I think that will be interesting to watch if there are some more big moves. Obviously, Paul made a trade today. He can't go a week without scratching that itch. But it is. We got about another month here before the trade deadline, so you got plenty of time to think it over. And I'll keep an eye on your team to see what you do, Manny.
Yeah, just stay tuned. We'll see. They'll either be fireworks or or you'll be scratching your head.
That's all right. Anything we'll now you've got everybody anticipating some action, so we'll be keen to watch for that. Anything else strike you here? We're 6 weeks in. Like I said, we've got a really jumbled mess of very few teams above 500, a lot in the middle. Anything stand out that we haven't hit on, or maybe haven't gotten to in previous episodes here, or this year if you've had a chance to watch them?
I think the waiver wire this year seems to me to have been more important even than in previous years with injuries and kind of the real upside we've seen coming out of the waiver wire. I think I've been one of the biggest beneficiaries. I mean, my wide receiver core coming to the year was all right. It was just mostly Nakua, Harrison underperforming. I picked up Johnson, who ended up being a top 10 wide receiver. You know, um, I picked up Vidal. And so I've had some luck, but I think other teams too are kind of reaping the benefits from the waiver.
Oh, definitely. I think it's one of those aspects where you've got to be active. Some years, there's home run type players available early. You don't really know that. You sort of have to try to guess, and maybe you get lucky. And then this is a kind of year where, because you've had all these injuries, where you kind of have to be very active and watching and trying to guess, or maybe be a week ahead, right? A week early potentially on certain players or on certain backups, just because of the nature of the game. And we'll see this week. We'll see. Or is there a player that gets picked up this week that becomes a week winner or a league winner? Certainly possible because of all the injuries that you've seen. You've seen guys go down for the year, right? James Conner's out for the year, and Tyreek Hill, and all the injuries on the Tampa Bay receivers. That makes guys valuable that nobody knew about. Makes rookies and these backups that nobody ever cared about. And then people like Kendrick Bourne are starting receivers, and people are racing to get to them. So I get it. It will be interesting. I'm nobody trades Fab except for that one time. So it is valuable. It is useful at the end of the day. So we'll see. We'll see. You know, as you're a big football fan. What? Excuse me. Why is my I don't even want to know what's going on. Why the cameras are going off in the baby rooms. Uh, that's not fun times. You know.
No. the dad problems.
Yeah, man. Let me tell you, there's never a dull moment. There's always something going on
Yeah.
with them. But yeah, I mean, what else strikes your fancy here? I do want to give a little bit of a shout out. Zach, new to the league, finally got his first win last week, pulled the upset. He doesn't have the worst team in the league, but being 0-5 going into week 6 was probably not where he thought he'd be. He made a number of trades, but he pulled off an upset. He beat La Magna in a terrible, terrible, terrible game. But you want to heap some praise on the new owner and give him some kudos here. Look, it wasn't exactly pretty, but
Yeah.
hey, a win's a
Well,
win.
yeah. Well, it's hard to kind of get used to the league and kind of how things run. I think we've all kind of internalized the cycle of draft versus the kind of aggressive in-season trades. We've all, not all of us. I'll speak for myself. I've been taking advantage in some trades, and I've done better in others. And so I think it's not a small thing to get your first win. And once you get the first one under your belt, they kind of keep coming. So I will give them some congrats and some props for giving the first W, especially against Matt's team, which is a good one.
Yeah, definitely got to win against a good opponent, which is always valuable. I mean, this week, look, he's your opponent this week. This is a projected tight matchup. Care to comment? Look, you could allow him to go on a winning streak. Are you nervous? Uh-oh. The mute button got him again.
Well,
that's
thanks. So I said I am worried with the state of my injuries. I think that's I think if my team is healthy, I can beat any team in the league. I don't, with a fully healthy team, I don't have many worries about that. It's the management in between. And so my problem is that the potential fill-in wide receivers that I have, they're really week to week. Worthy can blow up in a week, or he can kind of be average in a week. Who knows if Marvin Harrison is going to play like he was drafted, or he's going to play to the level of his competition and not really perform to the way like a top wide receiver can. Smith is a great wide receiver. Some weeks he's amazing. Other weeks he's pretty average or non-existent. Right? It's the inconsistency at the position that I'm not used to. Right? Nakua consistently top dog. Just really. And I remember you made fun of me when I got Nakua off the waiver.
I mean, look, you don't know what you don't know. I mean,
yeah.
This is a low draft pick in the NFL draft. He's not coming from, not a massive production player in college.
Yeah.
And he's a perfect scheme fit, right? I mean, at the end of the day, he's just a perfect scheme fit. That's how it is.
That's right.
Would he work that well in every offense? No. But in a Shanahan and McVay offense, he's going to be amazing, and he is. And kudos. But yeah, as we talked about, as you said, part of this is luck. Part of this is getting lucky, finding the right guys. And for you, I mean, look, we've talked about it, right? I think you got a strong team this week because of injuries, because of inconsistency. You're a little bit unsure of what's it going to look like at receiver and in this matchup, but I would still give you the edge here, right? Like,
knock on wood.
Baker should be in a shootout. Kyron Williams should be able to put up points. Kamani Vidal at least is going to get the touches. And then for the rest of it is, can like guys like Xavier Worthy, Travis Kelce put up points? I think you've definitely got a real chance in those matchups. I think
so.
Yeah, we'll see, right? I mean, you're not going against the other side. Doesn't really have. I mean, Dak could certainly go off. He's having a great year.
Yeah.
But there's not really a lot of guys I look at and go, well, that guy could go for 25 or 30. I mean, I guess Jaylen Warren, it's conceivable. But beyond that, I mean, you don't really look at a lot of huge point scorers. Although I will say Zach has the Broncos, and Jackson Dart is due for some kind of terrible game.
Yeah.
And that would be.
Yeah, I know.
This would be prime time for that.
Yeah.
You're both playing defenses against rookie quarterbacks, so that ought to be fun. I like that. I like that little wrinkle to this matchup.
Yeah. So I think it'll be a good matchup. We'll see. We'll see who comes out on top. I definitely don't want to be on the other side of a winning streak. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's fantasy football, right? It's one of those where projections don't necessarily mean a lot. They might mean some, more to some than others, but overall, I mean, they're not deciding factors. So, we'll certainly see. I'm rooting for you. I think it's a great story if you can, keep being competitive and staying in this fight. What I like about this year is most teams are, what's it, eight? I think it's 8 of 12 teams are within 10 points of each other in terms of average points for.
Yeah.
So there's a pretty big group of teams that are all relatively competitive in the same way, and that makes it fun, right? That makes it interesting, because you
No.
just don't know, right? So anyway, we'll finish it up here. What's the over under for the number of dishes that have been put away?
I think I think that's got to be the whole dishwasher is
It's got to be
empty at
every
this
dish in
point.
the house. Um, that's okay. That's okay. I look. We got to run it every 2 days over here.
Really?
So I
Yeah,
understand.
we get away a little bit less, a little bit with running a little bit less often. So it's the
Yeah.
trade off. It just happens during the pod.
Yeah, that's all right. Don't worry about it. I get it. I'm just happy there's not a screaming child
Yeah,
somewhere in my
well, that's
house.
another
Yeah.
possibility. So
Yeah, right. There's always, look, pros and cons, pros and cons. So everything good on the home front. It would seem like it. You're domesticated gentlemen these days. That's a good thing. We
yeah,
That excites everybody here. We won't make you put any kind of estimates or timelines on anything here. This is being streamed around the world. For
I
all of our
know.
one viewer. So we won't do that to you. But
Good.
we wish you the best. So thank you for joining us. I see you're repping the alma mater there. Um,
Always,
yeah, always, right? So,
always.
we'll see. Their football team's 3-3 as well. They're off to there's probably
Okay.
more wins than we
Okay.
ever
That's I
watched.
know. Wow.
Uh,
Wow. I might have showed up to a game had they been doing that
they
well.
made it. They were on SVP's Bad Beats they pulled off like some crazy cover win
Oh,
or something
really?
the other week. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I was like, that's weird. Um, yeah, like, you never know what you're gonna find. So anyway,
Oh,
we'll
wow.
throw that little nut out there for people to go chase after. So anyway, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah.
Please,
Thank you for having
give
me.
our best to the what will we call this, to the dishwasher individual. We appreciate their contributions. No, it's all good. We look forward to seeing you in person again soon, and
Yeah.
best of luck on the rest of the year. I'm sure we'll check in later on.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
All right, man.